alarm siren blaring. Imagine this: deafening alarms echoing through a tunnel beneath a Mexican prison, guards scrambling in confusion, and somewhere in the darkness, a short, unassuming man vanishing into legend. Dramatic? Sure. But this isn't a Hollywood script. It's the story of Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, the infamous drug lord whose escapes redefined the meaning of inescapable. Now, you might be wondering, how could anyone outsmart maximum security not once, but twice? Let me take you into the heart of Mexico's most unbelievable prison break and the man behind it all. But before we jump into the dirt and drama, let's set the stage. This is more than a jailbreak. It's a tale of power, corruption, and a mastermind who bent reality to his will. Today, we'll unravel not just one, but two escapes that rocked governments, inspired folk ballads, and forced the world to rethink what it means to be truly secure. So buckle up, because the El Chapo story is about to upend everything you thought you knew about crime, engineering, and the limits of human audacity. Let me tell you a story about origins. Picture a small village in the mountains of northern Mexico, where opportunities are scarce and hardship is the norm. This is where Joaquin Guzman Loera, later known as El Chapo, meaning Shorty, grew up. His family life? Abusive, deeply impoverished. But where others saw dead ends, young Joaquin saw openings. By the age of 15, he and his cousin were running their own marijuana plantation. That's right, while most teens are struggling through high school, he was managing illicit supply chains. It's easy to ask, how does a kid from nowhere become a global kingpin? The answer: logistics and adaptability. Two technical terms that in this context mean moving things efficiently and changing tactics on the fly. Soon, El Chapo would rise through the ranks of the Sinaloa Cartel, an organization that would become infamous for its reach and ruthlessness. But it all started with a boy in a mountain village searching for a way out, and that search, powered by desperation and ingenuity, laid the groundwork for one of the most sophisticated criminal enterprises in modern history. Now, you might be thinking, what sets El Chapo apart from the countless drug lords before him? Here's the answer: one word: tunnels. While most traffickers relied on bribery and brute force, El Chapo refined the art of underground logistics. Think of these tunnels as secret highways beneath the border. Over 120 major smuggling tunnels, some stretching for more than a kilometer, complete with lighting and ventilation. That's engineering prowess at a criminal scale. In technical terms, this is subterranean infrastructure and modular logistics. For you and me, it's like building a subway system, but instead of morning commuters, it's cocaine and cash traveling in the dark. I actually lived in Tijuana for a time, right near one of these infamous tunnels. Let me tell you, the sense of the unseen was palpable. You never quite knew what might be happening beneath your feet. By revolutionizing smuggling, El Chapo not only evaded authorities, he elevated his cartel to global dominance. Let's introduce our first major conflict. By the early 1990 seconds, El Chapo's operations had gotten too big, too noisy. Suddenly, law enforcement was on his heels, both in Mexico and across borders. He tried to escape south into Guatemala, using a fake passport. For a while, it looked like the kingpin might just slip away. But a routine checkpoint was his undoing: no shootout, just quiet surrender. Now, here's a technical term for you: extradition. That's when one country hands a suspect over to another for trial or punishment. Guatemala did just that, sending El Chapo back to Mexico, where he was locked in a maximum security prison. So, was this the end of the El Chapo story? Not even close. If anything, it was just the setup for his first legendary escape. Because, as you'll soon see, a fortress means nothing if the man inside can buy the loyalty of its guards. What's the real skeleton key in El Chapo's toolkit? Not lockpicking or gadgets, but corruption, the strategic buying of influence. In technical terms, institutional compromise. That means warping the rules from within instead of breaking them from without. Inside prison, El Chapo didn't just survive, he thrived. He cozied up to guards, offering generous payouts and support for their families. Suddenly, he was running his empire from behind bars. Now, you might be asking, did the authorities know? Some did, some didn't. Bribery in Mexico, mordida as it's called, is both a technical and cultural term describing the daily grind of payoffs that keep corrupt systems humming. And when rumors began to swirl about extradition to the U.S., El Chapo saw the writing on the wall. The only way out? An escape orchestrated with the help of those he'd already won over. Let's see how the world's most infamous inmate slipped through the cracks, literally thanks to the oldest trick in the criminal book. Setup. It's January 19th, 2001. Lights out in the high-security prison. El Chapo, restless, waits for his plan to unfold. Conflict. A trusted guard, El Chito, wheels in a laundry cart piled high with dirty uniforms. Security cameras? Mysteriously turned off. Coincidence? I doubt it. Now, you're probably thinking, how could this possibly work with all those cameras and locked doors? Here's where the technical terms come in. Access control, meaning only one door opens at a time, and surveillance circumvention, or dodging the watchful eyes of the system. El Chapo burrows beneath the laundry, is wheeled past checkpoints, and after a cursory search for contraband, not for a human body, he's loaded into the trunk of a Chevy Monte Carlo. Talk about hiding in plain sight. Resolution. With sleepy guards waving them through, El Chapo disappears into the night. By the time anyone notices, he's long gone. The entire fortress outsmarted by a laundry cart, a handful of bribes, and a master manipulator's charm. If you ever needed proof that security systems are only as strong as their weakest human link, this is it. So what happens when the most wanted man in Mexico melts into the wilderness? For 13 years, El Chapo became a ghost, rumored to be hiding in El Cielo, a mountain fortress near his hometown. Let me paint the picture. Rugged terrain, loyal guards, hidden tunnels, and a community where he was both feared and, believe it or not, admired. This is the concept of safe haven and plaza control. In plain terms, it's creating a zone so secure that even the government dares not enter. During these years, Mexico plunged deeper into a brutal drug war. El Chapo's empire flourished, with drugs moving through tunnels, across borders, and even by private jet to Australia. Now, I lived in Tijuana during those years, sometimes hitchhiking, sometimes hearing stories of narcos giving rides to missionaries. The violence was headline news, the sense of lawlessness palpable. But for all his Robin Hood image, let's not forget the suffering his business caused: addiction, violence, corruption. The myth and the reality were worlds apart. Why do so many people see El Chapo as a folk hero? The answer lies in narrative framing. That's a technical way of saying storytelling shapes perception. Media and local legend painted him as a Robin Hood, a man who thumbed his nose at corrupt officials and shared the spoils with the poor. But let's get real. His empire brought not just money, but addiction, violence, and widespread suffering. That's the dark side of what's called narco-culture, a phenomenon where outlaws become icons, even as their crimes destroy lives. Now, you might ask, did he really buy everyone dinner and confiscate phones at restaurants? Maybe. But even if true, these gestures were PR, not altruism. Ultimately, the myth of the benevolent bandit can't erase the fact that El Chapo's story is one of power built on pain and exploitation. So, next time you hear a corrido about him, remember it's a song, not the truth. By 2013, El Chapo was named Public Enemy Number 1 by the Chicago Crime Commission, the first since Al Capone. The world's attention locked onto him. In response, Mexico created an elite 200-person Special Forces unit, trained specifically to hunt him down. This is targeted enforcement. Think of it like assembling an all-star sports team for a single high-stakes match. But El Chapo's countermeasures were just as sophisticated. Every safe house was rigged with escape infrastructure trap, doors leading to tunnels, some hidden right under bathtubs. Let me ask, how many times can one man slip away? In one raid, police missed him by just 8 minutes, foiled by an underground passage leading straight into the city's sewer system. The pursuit had become a high-tech chess game, with law enforcement and criminal engineers locked in a battle of wits. Enter Altiplano, Mexico's most secure prison. Think of it as the Fort Knox of incarceration. Triple concrete walls, 7 watchtowers, barbed wire, anti-drone zones, and 750 surveillance cameras. Every movement, every whisper, monitored 24/7. Here are 2 technical terms: perimeter defense, the physical barriers that keep intruders or escapees out, and sensor fusion, meaning all those cameras and sensors feed into a central command center for real-time monitoring. El Chapo's cell? Tiny, 5 square meters. Bed, toilet, shower, and a small privacy wall the cameras couldn't see behind. His own personal guard rotated every few hours to prevent bribery. Ground sensors and radar checked for digging. Cell signal jammers blocked wireless communication. Every possible hole patched, or so it seemed. Now, you might be wondering, was this finally the end of El Chapo's escape artistry? Spoiler alert, the answer is no. Let's dive into the technical marvel of El Chapo's second escape. In a field a kilometer from the prison, a plain vanilla shack concealed a world-class tunnel project. This is clandestine excavation, the art of digging without detection. El Chapo's diggers went 7 meters down, then horizontally guided by geospatial targeting, think GPS meets blueprint, to aim for one precise spot, the small shower stall in his cell, hidden from cameras. Month after month, they installed lighting, ventilation, and even rails for a modified motorcycle, a literal underground escape train. The tunnel was 1.5 meters tall, 70 centimeters wide, just enough for a man and his accomplice to race to freedom. Now you might ask, how did they avoid detection? Dirt was quietly hauled away, and ground sensors failed to notice the activity. Even with all the technology, human oversight and clever engineering prevailed. After a year's work and tens of millions of dollars, the stage was set for the greatest escape of the modern era. It's July 15th, 2015. El Chapo paces in his cell, waiting. At 8:52 p.m., he slips behind the privacy wall in his shower, disappears through a hatch, and climbs down a ladder. Below, his brother-in-law waits, motorcycle engine humming in the darkness. Conflict. As alarms sound and confusion reigns, they mount the motorcycle, racing through the dimly lit tunnel, a kilometer of freedom dug beneath the authorities' noses. This is tunnel exfiltration, a technical term for underground escape. For the rest of us, it's something straight out of an action movie. Resolution. They emerge at the fake farm shack, dash to a waiting plane, and by the time prison officials realize what's happened, El Chapo is already airborne, taunting the government on social media. The world watched in disbelief. If you ever doubted the power of tunnel vision, both literal and figurative, this was the ultimate demonstration. After the second escape, Mexico was in shock. The president had called an escape unforgivable for the state. Yet El Chapo was gone, and the world's media erupted. Public outrage exploded. How could the strongest fortress fail? Now, here's where collective memory and narrative symbolism come in. Folk songs called corridos were written to celebrate El Chapo's daring flight. He became a symbol, not just of criminal genius, but of government failure. People cheered. Others despaired. For some, he was a hero. For others, a walking indictment of Mexican corruption. Songs, stories, and memes kept his legend alive in a culture fascinated by rebellion. But beneath the music and myth, the reality was grim. A system so compromised that even its greatest defenses could be bought, outsmarted, or tunneled under. Let me ask you, does the legend of El Chapo say more about him or about the world that allowed him to rise? You might think El Chapo could run forever, but hubris has consequences. After his second escape, he took risks inviting actor Sean Penn for an interview, pursuing a movie about his life. As law enforcement closed in, the walls finally started to close. A raid in Los Mochis led to a shootout, another tunnel escape, and a desperate dash through the sewers. But this time, the dragnet was too tight. El Chapo was captured once again and quickly extradited to the United States. Here's where the technical terms come back: Supermax prison and solitary confinement. In the U.S., he's housed at the Alcatraz of the Rockies, a facility designed for total isolation with 1,400 steel doors and rotating cells to prevent bribery or escape. He gets just 1 hour outside per day, under constant surveillance. No more bribes, no more tunnels, no more empire. In 2019, he was convicted on multiple charges and sentenced to life plus 30 years. Resolution. For the world's greatest escape artist, the run is finally over. Or is it? In the end, even legends can be caged, if only by building a prison as relentless as the man himself. Let's step back. What does the saga of El Chapo reveal about power, security, and human ingenuity? On one level, It's a cautionary tale about systemic vulnerability, a technical phrase for the way entire institutions can be undermined by a single, determined actor. On another, it's proof that technology and fortresses are only as strong as the people running them. No censor or wall can compensate for corruption in the ranks. Now you might be thinking, so what's the solution? Build bigger prisons? Smarter tech? Maybe. But maybe the real answer lies in building trust, accountability, and a culture where no one is above the law. El Chapo's story may be cinematic, but its lessons are sobering. Every system has a weak point. The question is, will we learn to fix ours before the next mastermind finds it? Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this deep dive, subscribe for more stories that unveil the hidden gears of our world, and let me know what you want to hear next.